So Joletta is a storyteller, advocate, and educator. Hello, Joletta. She makes sense of her pain through science and stories on her blog, mycupofjoe.com, and is co-founder of the Endless Possibilities Initiative, a nonprofit organization with a mission of empowering people living with pain to live well. Both projects were born of her experiences living with chronic pain. Joletta is now an advocate for advancing the integration of the lived experience into the study, research, and treatment of pain, which led to her position as co-chair of the Global Alliance of Pain Patient Advocates, GAPA, a presidential task force for the International Association for the Study of Pain. She is also the first patient and public partnerships editor for the Journal of Orthopedic and Sports Physical Therapy. And she'll be joined today by Dr. Francine Toye, who studied archaeology and anthropology at Cambridge University and later qualified as a physiotherapist. She is currently qualitative research lead of Oxford University Hospital's NHS Trust Oxford. Fran's research aims to explore how culture, context, and narrative affect patients' and clinicians' healthcare decisions. She has published a body of qualitative research and has expertise in qualitative research methodology, including qualitative systematic review. Fran's research plans are to focus on maximizing the impact of qualitative research through complementary modes of dissemination, such as audio-visual media. So welcome, Joletta and Fran.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank everyone who arranged for this webinar to happen and say good evening from the UK. It's the evening here. So I shall start the slides. Okay, so the idea behind the paper that you'll see in this special edition it hinges around a film that myself and colleagues made several years ago. And this film, which is available on YouTube, it was a 10-minute film that presented findings from a qualitative evidence synthesis about the experience of living with pain. This synthesis combined and synthesized 77 qualitative studies. Now, since then, we've had a lot of interest in the film, and what we've wanted to do for some time is to actually look at some of the comments that are written on YouTube in response from viewers, and to try and understand what potential impact, what potential value that this film has. Okay, so the focus of this next 10 minutes, we want to give, Joletta and I want to present an overview of the findings, and we also want to raise some of the issues and controversies that qualitative research can raise. So first of all, should we use a priori themes to guide analysis? What are some of the ethical considerations of internet-based qualitative research? Can we, and it's a question that I will open to everybody, can we actually evaluate the impact of qualitative research? So first of all, how are we going to analyse this data? And what we decided to do was to actually use some of the large amount of work that we've done already in this area, and we used themes from a meta-ethnography, and this meta-ethnography is a review of qualitative evidence syntheses. So we pulled together 11 studies, and we decided that we would use the themes from this to help to guide us in our analysis. So we were confident in some of these findings because it was a very large review, incorporated 187 qualitative studies, and these studies incorporated more than 5,000 participants. So we had some confidence in the themes that we were going to be using as a priori themes to sensitize us to the data. So what I want to do over the next slide is to invite Joletta to talk about the themes, the a priori themes that we found resonated with the online data, and to talk about these themes with her own experience in mind. So Joletta, please.
Thank you, Fran. So As Fran said, I'm going to share my own story of struggling to be me with chronic pain following the a priori themes. So I was a firefighter paramedic, the fittest and strongest I'd ever been, working a job I loved when pain turned my world and my way of being in the world upside down. As the pain worsened, my pained world grew smaller and smaller. I became a prisoner in my own home, in my hip, in my head. I struggled to make sense of things, couldn't understand why my body had become a traitor that let in this enemy pain that took away so much. My career, my financial security, my friends, my future, my purpose, my worth. I didn't know who I was anymore and didn't like who I'd become. I tried to put on a brave and happy face, tried so hard not to be a burden, including on my healthcare providers, who I yearned would listen to me, acknowledge my distress, validate my pain, and treat me with dignity, only to be punted yet again to the next provider when their treatment didn't work. So I kept looking for the fix, the holy grail, the one person, the one treatment that would finally set me free. After years of failed treatments, I was defeated and demoralized and finally gave up the search. It was so hard. It felt like losing hope, losing my future, but was ultimately what led to my escape from the chaos of pain that had so long confined me.
Thank you, Gilletta. Thank you for sharing that with us. As I have said, that the themes resonated with the a priori themes, resonated with what we found online. We also found two additional themes that we thought added to the data. So the first of which, linked with having an impoverished and confined life, was this idea that I've actually had enough of me, that I don't actually want to go on living like this. And for some, the only thing that holding them really together was the sort of love and support of their families, friends, colleagues. And the second additional theme was linked to lost personal credibility, that my credibility is so low that I feel that I'm actually being treated like a criminal. And this was often associated with the use of opioids and the prescription of opioids. So the first thing that I want to briefly talk about is whether we should use a priori themes in qualitative analysis. And I have to admit that really this wouldn't be an approach that I had normally used or had used before. As I said, we were confident in the themes that we had. And I think what was important is that we use these themes as sensitizing, as Herbert Blumer talks about, sensitizing, not definitive concepts. So these sensitizing concepts give us a general sense of reference and guidance in approaching empirical instances, and they suggest directions along which to look. They don't define the analysis. So just as in this diagram, yellow, blue, red, the primary colours help us to explore and understand the whole spectrum of colour that there is. So we could be accused of trying to fit square pegs into round holes, and that is another interesting discussion to have. But what I've started to think about is that actually it's when we find a square peg that doesn't quite fit in a hole, this is actually where the knowing in qualitative research occurs, that it's a process that occurs at the interface. And that really maybe as qualitative researchers embracing that square peg and gaining knowledge from that lack of fit is actually an important aspect of our analysis. So what I want to do in the next couple of slides is to talk about the two additional themes that we felt demonstrated that the YouTube film had some potential value and impact to viewers. So first of all, it has given voice to our suffering. So things like, she's speaking for us all, I feel so identified, it's like she's talking about me, someone's read my thoughts, my feelings, the film has summed up my life in 10 minutes, this is my life as it's happening right now. And Joletta, I wonder if you might talk to us about what you feel about this as a potential value and impact of the film.
Yeah, and I agree with the commenters on the film, and it is like hearing your own story. And that's so important because when we're in pain for a long time, when we're in that abyss, in the chaos, it can be really difficult to give voice to our experience, which is something Craig mentioned in his presentation too. And nothing seems to make sense when you're in that place. So to hear someone else sharing their story, and it sounds so much like your own, you feel seen and understood. And in that being seen and understood, it's like a burden is lifted, and then you're able to start giving voice to your own suffering, your own struggle, your own pain. That burden being lifted can help you to feel, lighter, and that makes our pain in ourselves more able to be dealt with. And it helps us to feel more visible and known and not so alone.
Thank you. Thank you, Joletta. And the second theme that we felt provided some potential value to the film is it makes me feel like I'm not alone. So it's like everyone in pain shares my story. We have to stick together. We're in the same boat. I'm here for you. We're here for each other. I know your pain. And again, Joletta, I wonder if you might say a few words about this theme.
Yeah, thank you. Pain can be so isolating and lonely. It can feel like when you're in that place that no one understands what you're going through and that you're on your own. And that is incredibly daunting and can be really overwhelming. So to know that we are not alone, it provides a desperately needed connection and solidarity with other humans, that human connection that we may have been missing for a long time. It may even allow us to be a bit kinder and more compassionate with ourselves because we realize that we're not just flawed, broken, damaged, dysfunctional, failed people, that we do have this shared experience with so many others, that we're not abnormal, just human, having a very human, very difficult human experience that others do understand and have had to navigate and are navigating themselves, and that we can all support and encourage one another.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. So the next slide, I want to talk about one of the only criticism that was up from the comments on the film, and these criticisms surrounded the scenes in the film where the lady with chronic pain is actually carrying her bags and her shopping from the shop here, as you can see here, and getting into the car and driving. And people, a couple of viewers commented that it didn't look like a true picture of pain, that she can do all this stuff. And what was very encouraging for me was how the community of online viewers actually rallied around and said that these sort of comments were pretty low, that she may just be pushing herself through her pain and not showing it, and that it was a very dangerous thing, in fact, to say. So that was almost a positive thing for me that came out of that criticism. So what I want to talk briefly now is about some of the ethical considerations of using data from that we gather online. Now we have a duty to respect the autonomy, privacy and dignity of individuals and communities that we research. And I think one of the important things that we had to consider, and we should all need to consider, is that just because data is accessible, it doesn't mean that it's public. And secondly, and this applies not only to online data, but to consider what is personally identifiable information, to consider that it's not just removing people's names in geographic locations that is the only thing to think about with identifiability. So they are a couple of things to think about ethically. And finally, the third issue that I'm sort of raising to everybody is whether we can actually evaluate the impact of qualitative research at all, and if so, how do we do this? So how do we measure the impact of art, as with art here, with art or poetry? How can we say the impacts may be subtle, they may be long-standing, they may not be felt for some time after, or they may be accumulative? I've started to look at this, that some of you may be familiar with, the Lafreniere and Cox arts-based research assessment, and I've started to think of some of these things for potential ways of evaluating. So does our work generate emotions and feelings? Does it help us to understand and appraise the issues? Does it generate dialogue or discussion? And does it actually move us to change our behaviour in salient ways? So thank you all again for inviting us to do this. Thank you very much to Joletta for joining me in this presentation.